Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Again, messing around with the intro just because I can. It is Sunday, February 2nd at 4:05 p.m. Hope you are well. I was doing some thinking. I don't even know if I'm on yet. It's the best thing about streaming. Okay, looks like I'm on. Very, very good. Hope you're doing well. Thanks to everybody who's going to tune in live or is already here. I was doing some statistical digging today, and I thought it was interesting what I found. So I wanted to pass it on to you, pass on some of my thoughts. You can see the thumbnail already talking about Painter, but I'm gonna tell you why I use that thumbnail here in a second. Before I do it, let me thank our sponsors who have been great partners this season. Thanks to Home Field Apparel. If you head over to homefieldapparel.com, you can check out, they have these pretty cool hockey jerseys. I think they call them rink side something. Can't remember what they are, but Purdue's is solid. I like some of the others better, if I'm being real honest. But if you like hockey jerseys and you want to see a new take, they've got some retro stuff. It looks like it's from the, I would guess, early 90s, based on some of the colors. But check those out. Enter Boiled25 at checkout. Get 15% off your first order. Or those sweaters. I keep saying, the classic sweaters on there. If you want to get boiler down something from Home Field Apparel, get me one of those sweaters with the big block P. Also, when you're at Purdue and you're watching Purdue do things that don't make any sense, meaning grinding out another win, doing something that's beyond understanding. I don't know if that Gamers IU is one of those, but sometimes it happens. And if you're at Mackey Arena and you're like, man, I'm hungry after watching that game, you want to head towards the fire station. Sprint that way. When you get to the fire station, turn left. You'll see the blue lights of AJ's. Go inside. Give Adam and Jake a hug. Tell them thank you for doing what you do. God bless you guys. Then get some corn dog nugs, get some mac and cheese bites, grab a burger, and grab a pint. At the bottom of your pint, if it's game day, you're going to get a Boiled Sports Magnet for free. Pretty good deal. Burgers, beef, beer. That's AJ's. Okay, so I dug into some stats today. I'm not going to get into all of them because I think it's pretty boring talk. And what I found when I dug into the stats for your Purdue Boilermakers is they're not great at anything. They really aren't. They're good at a lot of stuff, and they're notably bad on some things. But the reason I dug into them was because I saw that, and I made the statement, can we just say that Purdue's not a good shooting team after the IU game? And Purdue's had enough stinkers or crappy games, whatever you want to say it, how edited you want to get, where they just didn't shoot the three ball well. And they didn't shoot a lot of them. That's the other thing. In a day of modern basketball where the three ball is so important, so many teams base their success on how well they shoot the three. And Purdue's had games this year where they flat out looked horrible from three. And it's made a big difference on how successful many teams are. Look at UConn, for instance. UConn the other night went just absolutely crazy on, maybe it was Butler. Oh, no, it was Marquette. They shot the ball really, really well. And when you shoot the ball really, really well, you're generally going to win. Well, when Purdue shoots the ball really well, they win. There's no doubt about it. Was the Michigan game. They shot the ball exceptionally, and they absolutely ripped Michigan open, right? But many games have been like the IU game where they just don't shoot it well. There's no rhythm from deep. Nobody wants to take the three. And I think Paint has made it pretty clear to some guys, if you're not in rhythm, don't take it. But he doesn't ever tell people not to take the shot. Purdue's not a great three-point shooting team. Well, what else are they not great at? Well, they're really not great statistically defensively. Sure. We watch the games where like, this defense is ratcheted up. Purdue is guarding the passing lanes really well, making the other team feel uncomfortable, getting them out of rhythm. But it's not like the old Purdue teams with Chris Kramer up there where, you're pressuring them out to the other baseline. Sure, CJ Cox does that now, right? And Braden Smith is great in the passing lane. His scouting report steals are noteworthy. But at the same time, this team they don't block shots. They're one of the worst in America blocking shots, right? And it steals. If you look at the individuals, there's not a ton of guys that are lighting the world on fire with steals. Granted, Braden Smith's had some games that are noteworthy. Just had one. But they're not like the old Painter teams where you're like, man, That's the best defense I've ever seen until recently when they've really changed things. Brian Newbert talked about it on Gold and Black, for instance, last week. Worth a read. Very good. And then you look at the rest of the individual stats. Let's really talk. So one thing that's kind of interesting is quietly how well Fletch Lawyer has shot the ball. Of players in the Big Ten that shoot at least 4 threes a game, and I mean that, the reason I say that, he's like 8th in the league in three-point shooting this year. But I think shooting 4 a game is a pretty good mark to say, okay, you're shooting it regularly, not just a guy who's shot a couple this season, gotten lucky, not a Zach Edey type thing shooting 50%, right? But if you look at that, Fletch Lawyer is a pretty damn good shooter. He's the best in the league in three-point percentage by that metric. On top of that, Smith is the best passer in the league, the best at assists by a lot. I think he has 8.8 or something like that per year. The nearest to him is a whole assist behind him, which is a long way to go in a long season. After that, they drop off significantly. So Smith is great at passing the ball. Fletch is good at shooting the ball. And TKR, his offense he's so efficient. He's so efficient. And again, I want to say, I think we as Purdue fans underappreciate TKR and what he is to Purdue. But when you look at the rest of it, you kind of say, what makes this Purdue team so good? How are they 9-2 in conference? And speaking of that, in case you haven't been paying attention, Michigan State lost yesterday in a head scratcher to USC on the road on the West Coast. And now it's a half game lead for Michigan State in the conference race. But why is it that way? Well, pretty simple to me. It's Paint doing what he does. He focuses on efficiency and tries to squeeze absolutely everything he can out of teams and get them not to give away points, gets them not to give away possessions. Purdue's 10th best offense in offensive efficiency, according to KenPom in America. They're 31st in defensive efficiency, but that's because that ranking was so bad early in the season. They've gotten better. They've scratched, they've clawed, they've gotten better as the season has gone on. I don't know what their adjusted defensive efficiency is right now, like what it is the last 10 games, but I guarantee it's different than it looks. But I would say, and we've seen this, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong and why you think I'm wrong, that this is one of Paint's best jobs as a coach. The small adjustments. I had somebody a couple weeks ago in the comments get mad at me because I said the adjustment to the lineup when he moved Cox and First into the starting lineup really wasn't that big of a coaching stroke, wasn't that big of a move. It's just changing lineups. And I responded in the next show saying, you don't really understand coaching if you don't think that's big of a deal. Adjusting the lineup that significantly when you were winning, and Purdue was winning at that point, is a pretty big risk because you're saying, are we going to ruin all the chemistry? Are we going to ruin all the psyches that are going on? There's some guys that are struggling this year at different times and different things. Sure, that happens. But what that move did, it really changed the way Purdue approached defense. It changed the way the team plays the toughness altogether, the way the unit addressed the game. It was a stroke of genius. But more than that, he did it because he saw something in practice that was happening and something that he wanted to see from the team. Why is Purdue great? Well, this isn't that you don't have a Zach Edey type of guy on this team. You have your guy on the team is Braden Smith, of course, because he just fills a stat sheet, right? But TKR's game is probably a pretty good representation of what Purdue is, right? It's not a lot of sizzle, but it's a ton of steak. His game is not something that's going to get the attention of national pundits by any means, right? He's not doing anything where like, oh my gosh, he just jumped from the free throw line. He's lighting things on fire. One thing it's fun, I'd say if we just say, is fun a metric? Sure, fun's a metric. We started trying to come up with a nickname for what Purdue is this year because at times Braden Smith is just lobbing to everybody, trying to get an alley-oop, right? So calling it West Lobtown, pretty fun, right? I mean, this team loves the alley-oop, right? You've got both Colvin and Heidi can go up high to get about anything. And man, I keep saying First athleticism is slept on by a lot of people, but if Smith puts it near the rim, near the glass, they're probably going to get it. Smith has overshot a couple times, but that's kind of fun. And that's the sizzle part of Purdue, if you will. That stuff has made the national media a couple times. But the steak part is the TKR type of game where the shot clock's winding down. You get it to him, and he puts up a 15-foot fadeaway hook like he did versus IU to really put the game away. And it falls. And a lot of people say, okay, it's a hook, no big deal. That is a really difficult shot. And something doesn't show up how difficult that shot was and how well TKR made that, how difficult it is to make it happen, how well TKR played in that play to get points on the board, how important those points were, right? That's Purdue. That's Purdue this year. It's not showing up in the boxes. It's not showing up in analytics. And if you're really good deep dives, you can probably tell me something that I don't know. That's not hard to do. I'm not the smartest guy, but I can tell you the easy stats to read. When you just go through the Big Ten stats, you go on, I think it's whatever the Big Ten website is. I spent about 35 minutes just looking at saying, okay, why is Purdue special? You can't find a lot of things. I would still make the point, and I still do make the point, that this season is a transitional season. Next year is the one that is going to be really fun, really noteworthy. Expectations will be higher if everybody comes back, which I'm expecting pretty much everybody to be back, right? Obviously, first is gone. That's going to hurt a little bit, and that's going to take some adjustment to the lineup and things like that. But boy, the weapons are back. And next year you got, I always say the best thing in the NCAA tournament is a guard-heavy team. Look at UConn as a business model. In the history of UConn, they've had some of the best guards during tournament time, and they're not alone. Guards rule the day in the NCAA tournament in modern basketball. Guys like Zach Edey really don't. And what Zach Edey did last year, carrying Purdue to a championship, really noteworthy, really odd. TKR is a special player. He's going to be really, really good before it's all over. My hope is that everybody comes back that can come back. I don't want anybody leaving. Anybody, and I mean that all the way through the roster. I want to see what Benter does next year. I think that'll be fun. There's a lot of reasons to be excited for next year, but there's a lot of reasons to be excited right now. So that's all I had really today. I just wanted to put a thought out there, see what your comments were. You're welcome to sound off in the comments below. But like to hear your thoughts and like to start a little bit of a conversation. There are some people here, H&H Productions. I assume that's, what's H&H? I don't know. Says Boiler Up. Good to have you here. Ted Berkey says this is a good team and Paint is doing a great job. Paint is doing. Okay, how about this? You can sound off in the comments and start a little bit of discussion or continue discussion. What is Paint's best season as a coach if this isn't it? Let me know what you think. Next up, Olive Jazzer says, oh yeah. Zach Welch says, Boiler Up. Happy Sunday, Boiler Down. Same to you. I'm watching, as we speak, the ridiculous NFL Pro Bowl thing, whatever this is. I don't know if you can see the reflection over my shoulder. You can probably see that. There's Eli Manning. But I don't really know what this is. They're playing a modified flag football right now. There's not much on. The good games this week on Sunday, they're not very noteworthy. Illinois beat Ohio State, and they're back to being healthy. Could become deadly. They struggled a little bit versus Ohio State until they put space between them at the end. But Illinois has been in a bit of a pickle when it comes to the conference title. They're pretty far down. Zach Welch continues. Also, did you catch Odom's Mackey introduction? Any thoughts? The introduction I saw with Odom, I didn't see the one this week. I assume you're talking about during the IU game. Didn't see it. I saw Odom's introduction at, was it the Nebraska or the Northwestern game? I was there in person, and that was pretty fun. But I don't know. I'm sure there's more to what you're talking about. So maybe I gotta go study up and watch a video. I might do that. Olive Jazzer says, looking sharp with the sweater button down combo. Thank you. Appreciate that. And this is once again, it's church clothes. So for me, the sloppy hoodie is what I like to roll in, but not today. My pal Todd Singer says, good day. Started with brunch at a bourbon bar. Not bad. The Whisk in Greencastle, Indiana. Never been there. Maybe I'll have to go there. There's a really good one in Westfield. And that's by Old Hamer. I think they own it. That's a good one. And you can get a pretty good brunch there. No, I have no affiliation with them, but I think I've had 2 good meals there. But yeah, they haven't been to the Greencastle, Indiana one. Zach Young says, speaking of college hockey, how incredible would it be if they went Division I with the club team? It'd be awesome. And it'd be really, I have had friends that have played on the club team. That'd be really, really cool to see them come up. The problem is the expense of a hockey program is way up there. And Purdue has been historically frugal, if I'm going to put it nicely, with the way they have sports teams. And they're due for another one, if we're being real honest. And Purdue's athletic department has been pretty successful monetarily of late. So, yeah, I would love to see that. Dylan would love to see that. I know that he's a big Purdue hockey backer. Andy in Colorado says, Boiler up, good to see everybody. Yep. Ted Berkey continues, are your stats looking at month versus month to see progress? Yes, I've done both. And obviously the last month and a half, it's better. It's better. But it's hard to break down specifically where Purdue's gotten better. It's really this new year. If we're going to be real honest, it's starting in 2025, Purdue has looked like a different team. It's almost like to the date. New year, new team. Who dis? Yeah, so the season long stats are definitely not indicative of what Purdue is. There's no doubt, but that's a fair point. Let's see. Typovich 1 says, I live in New Albany, Hillbillyville, he says. Standing in line at Kroger, 82-ish year old man saw my Purdue pullover and murmured, someone better hold me back. A lot of frustration. I can tell you, I went to a Fishers basketball game yesterday. My nephew plays basketball at Fishers High School and freshman team. Fishers varsity team, by the way, that is a mother. If you didn't see on Twitter, I posted how much they beat Carmel by. I mean, it was 80-39. So my nephew's team, the freshman team, is not. They're not that. I'll say that. My nephew had a couple threes, though. Good to see. Shoots like his dad, not his uncle. But yeah, I wore a subtle Purdue look, just kind of a flex, and it's fun. It's fun. After an IU game, it's fun. But the funny thing about IU fans is I don't know why you'd ever say anything in earshot of a Purdue fan right now. I just don't get it. I've never understood that about IU fans. I don't think Purdue fans would do that because I think of us as a little smarter than that, but who knows? It's a dumb move. Dang223434 says, I had a char dog dressed like a Chicago dog on Friday at AJ's. Nice. Yeah. So I got to ask everybody a question, a very important question about a Chicago dog, since you bring it up. Tomatoes on the Chicago dog. Does everybody like that? See, I'm not a big fresh tomato guy, but I've never understood the tomatoes specifically on a Chicago dog. And generally, I nix that. Love the pickles, love the onions. That's all good. I like it when there are peppers on there, but tomato, can't do it. And they all fall off. Maybe it's a technique thing. Nate Dolan says, why do you think Heidi and Colvin don't make any drives to the basket like Lawyer? Very, very good question. I don't understand a lot what's happened to that. And I think their ability to create, because of their athleticism, should be on display all the time. I can't figure that out. And it doesn't make much sense. But all I can think is these guys, both of them aren't feeling comfortable. I hope it's that simple. If it's that simple, we could see both of them bust out before the end of the season, and it would be magical for Purdue. Not only the ability to shoot and make buckets, but also the ability to drive and finish. Both of them can finish around the hoop. One problem they've got, if we're being real honest, is they're not the most sure ball handlers, but you really don't need to handle the ball that well to drive. You just need to put the ball on the floor once or twice, right? Especially a guy like, actually either of them, they both have long strides. So it's a good question, though. And someone brought that up in the comments after the IU game post. So it's a good question, though. Just to be clear, because I had somebody say, give Heidi some credit. And I guess it's possible that you don't come on here very often. You don't see all the comments I make. You just came up with the IU game. It's like a Christmas and Easter type thing at church because the IU game is so big and maybe more people come to listen to what I have to say about the IU game. I am a fan of Heidi and Colvin. I was critical of them in that game, and I don't think I was mean in my criticality. Maybe you see it differently, but I wasn't intending to be. In fact, I think both those guys are absolutely imperative. Purdue's going to make noise in the NCAA tournament. It's going to be one or both of them doing some big things, getting hot. Maybe not carrying Purdue, but being the guys that come in off the bench and making the three in the corner, always important. Every team who makes a run in the NCAA tournament seems to have that guy who comes in and does it, right? So, yeah, I think they're very important, and I think they absolutely can do big things this year. Dennis Desarn says, why can't you recover Greg Graham? It's a good question. Why can't you recover Greg Graham? Sick and tired of losing Purdue. Very, very good question. Dang223434 says, oh yeah, no tomato. Good. I'm not alone in this. That's very, very good. I think, the Chicago dog is a little different than the chili dog, obviously. It's a different sort of messy. unless you just like salad, right? You're going to be eating the salad off of the tray after you've eaten that, because there's going to be a lot of fresh refuse, if you will, on the tray. But chili dog, you have to get a fork or a spoon out. Olive Jazzer says, problem is most of the time they ain't proper homegrown tomatoes. This is a good point. Big difference, big variance in tomato quality. There's no doubt about that. And in the Midwest, a winter tomato, not great. Get that thing sun-dried or something. Nate Don't says, I'm effing tired of losing Purdue. Yeah, this song has made impact. So thanks to, who did I say it was? I can't even remember. Don't mean to take away credit. I just can't remember who it was right now, because my brain never works when I'm on the spot. That's the joy of almost being 50 years old. Andy in Colorado says, sitting around with an 8-10 record. Yeah, the song. Hopefully you've found it. I put it in the comments. I put the link in the comments. But yeah, it's definitely worth listening to if you didn't listen to the last post game. So let's see. Adam P says, good afternoon. What's the occasion? You're gonna have to go back to the beginning and check it out. But what I'm talking about is what has Painter done to make this team special? How special is this? I guess that's the real question. How special of a season is this in the long history of Matt Painter coach teams? How are they winning? And we obviously know the core 3 juniors have really mattered. They've been stable. They've been pretty steady. But when you look at them statistically, this team still, you're like, okay, obviously Smith fills a stat sheet, but his ability to push the pace, Smith's ability to push the pace, Smith's ability, I say this all the time, when Purdue is really working, it's going to come down a lot to Smith's ability I always say it's like he's got the defense on a yo-yo string. He'll drive, he'll feel out where the defense is. Sometimes he leaves his feet, which may frustrate a lot of you fundamentally sound viewers, where you're like, why did you leave your feet? And I can understand, as an ex-coach, I'd say that is a very accurate criticism. But generally, when he leaves his feet, he knows exactly where he's going to, a spot where a guy's supposed to be on the offense. And he usually leaves his feet, and he's going to throw it to that spot regardless. And some of his turnovers come from that. So he could still eradicate that issue. There's no doubt. But he knows where everybody's supposed to be, and he knows where the defense isn't. And his ability to just make teams look like they're spinning like a top is pretty damn noteworthy. No doubt. And that doesn't show up in a box score either, does it? John Timmons says, best paint coaching job was back in 14. I think after losing to North Florida with Gardner Webb and 2 bad seasons prior, we bounced back to make the tournament. That's a good one. I think you could go back to the baby Boilers too. And that first season, they lost to Wofford. And if you listen to the historical account of that, a lot of people say the players got together, they don't say it. This is the story. Players got together, had a team meeting, and that Wofford loss turned to be the catalyst of what became a great team. This is kind of Purdue's story historically, right? It takes a really painful, awful thing to make something great. I don't have to go much further back, do I have to remind us? Fairleigh Dickinson. The Fairleigh Dickinson loss is maybe the most important loss in the history of the program. And it's also the thing that you as a Purdue fan hear more shit about than you have anything else in your life, probably, if we're being real honest. By the way, you got a pretty good life if that's the biggest stress you're dealing with or have dealt with. But those big losses have made a big difference in Purdue's history. This is part of the reason I think Purdue fans are built the way we are, right? We've watched this happen before, where we grow a chip on our shoulder as fans and the team, along with the team, to make something better, right? So, but yeah, I think 14's a good opinion, accurate opinion. Typovich one says, Anthony Leal takes over most sketchy player over Luke Recker. Wow. I would put a couple Wisconsin players into that running right away. And I can think of 2 or 3 off the top of my head that they're above Leal. But Leal, I'd never liked the fake nice guy. The guy you're like, oh, he's a good guy. And then you watch him on the court, the antics don't match up with the big nice guy image. And that's part of the reason I don't like a lot of the Wisconsin players. They look to me like they're trying, oh, no, everything's... And then you see what they do between plays or away from the attention. tapping a guy on the nuts between a play, or a cheap shot, or that sort of thing. That I got no time for that. So, but I can understand. I like Luke Recker's story for a couple reasons. Number one, leaving IU, that's awesome. The second part, though, that car wreck was absolutely tragic. What happened in his life was super tragic, and he came back to do some great stuff there. So I always rooted for Recker at Iowa, and I can understand why people didn't like him. He had a whiny, punchable face. There's no doubt about that, but I rooted for Recker after he left IU. Let's see. Adam P says, probably because they're just tall and foul merchants. This is a good point. All of Purdue, they're just tall and foul merchants. This is a great point. And oh my gosh, I got to tell you guys something. I think you'll like this. On Instagram, I don't go by my real name. I try to use different names on different social media. But I made a comment on one of the posts, said, it was right after the Purdue basketball feed on Instagram. I made a comment, said, when Edey graduates, this team's going to be horrible. And I had people say, they're pretty good still. And they were coming at me like they thought I was not being sarcastic. I'm like, you think I watched this entire Purdue game and thought Edey's still playing and they just left him on the bench? But I thought it was funny. Like, sarcasm, obviously, it doesn't translate onto social media much of the time. But yeah, so yes, they are just tall. They're all foul merchants. I agree, which is what we're told. We were told last year. Haven't been on Twitter much to hear this year the reason why Purdue wins. Oddly enough, and maybe it's because I'm not listening very hard, but I don't hear some of the stupid criticisms from Illinois and all that. It's almost like a lot of fan bases have forgotten Purdue exists, which I love. All the focus of the media has been on Michigan State and been on, early in the season, Illinois being the most complete team, right? And Michigan, oh my gosh, May is such a good coach. They're incredible. And so you got those three stories have been dominating the press. And as a result, those three fan bases have been kind of beating each other up. And then IU falling off the face of the earth. I think they've left, many of them left social media. Purdue's just quietly half game back. Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. Ron Gable, my buddy, says, good coaching is when overall value of the team is greater than the sum of its parts. Payne is good at that. Very good point. And that's my point, Ron. I think you and I, we know each other well enough. We could discuss this in person. But yeah, that's my point. Some of this team's parts are pretty darn good. How about this one? Purdue couldn't get points off the bench for what? Month and a half, 2 months at all. And now all of a sudden they're starting to creep up. You're starting to see points coming off the bench. Slowly but surely, guys that should be hitting a freshman wall are getting better. I want everybody to think about something. This is something that got in my head yesterday. Next year, with the idea of, let's say you got Smith and Lawyer, of course, in the starting lineup, and then you have Cox and Harris right after them. That is a deadly group of guards. I mean, there's so much skill and so much, you've got toughness, you've got skill, you've got experience, you've got the beauty of youth, you've got the whole thing there. But those four guards, I mean, I think there's a possible lineup where you could see four of them plus TKR at times. Maybe you inject Heidi or Colvin in there as a true wing. But man, the pace that they could play with would be awesome. And I've already got these visions of sugar plums in my head for next year. So a lot of fun there. Zachary Welch says, I think Carson and Klein Elite Eight run might be the best coaching job. I would counter this. And I talked about this. I don't know if you've been around here that long. I always said, I thought Carson, I always said Boogie would help Painter break through his own ceiling, because he defied Painter in a way Painter somehow respected. It was the first time we saw Paint say, okay, I'm not going to pull this guy, use the hook all the time. When early in Edwards' career, Paint would use that hook, right? His freshman, sophomore year, he's like, why the hell isn't he in there, right? Well, nobody can fill it up like him, because he took a ton of stupid shots. Was that junior year? He started allowing him to have more rope, right? That Penn State game, I remember, where he had just a horrible shooting game. Purdue somehow won on his shoulders. But it was such a watershed moment, right? Letting that guy go because his potential was that great. He tried to do it again with Ivy later. It didn't work out quite as well, obviously, because at the end of that season, it seemed like that team was almost sick of each other. And if you read between the lines, it seemed like they may have been. But look what Ivy's become in the league. He's matured. This is what my toughest thing to watch with Ivy was like, there's a better version of him we're not going to get to see. And so you kind of want to see, okay, if we've seen this guy squeeze everything he can out of his career in college, when you see a guy go to his max, that's kind of rough because you're like, okay, he doesn't have anything left to go play pro sports, play in Europe, play in the NBA. But Ivy, man, he's elevated his game. He's elevated his off-court mentality. He's elevated a lot. Boy, would Purdue have been good with him. I mean, he could still be there right now. Galloway and he are the same class. That's a crazy thought in itself, I think. Matt Borders says, can you imagine if Edey stayed for his COVID year? Yeah, I think about that a lot. I thought about that last year because I knew there'd be a lot of guys still sticking around. Dickinson sticking around, staying a Cancer to wherever he goes, like he is at Kansas. I mean, every time Kansas lose, I blame Dickinson and I laugh a little bit. But Dickinson and Edey are classmates. And then there are guys way older than Edey. Caleb Love at Arizona, he took over a game the other night. I think Caleb Love is a year or two older than Edey. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think he's a year or two older. And then there's another North Carolina player that's still there from the national title team or national championship team that lost. I can't remember who that is. And I know Love was at UNC too. But man, Edey on this team, gracious. How about maybe you've moved on mentally, or maybe you think about it every now and then. With Purdue being, the 300 whatever ranked shot blocking team in America, Jacobson on this team. Right now, Jacobson on this team. What's that do? Who knows? But he's going to make him think twice about driving the lane. No doubt about that. Blake says, agree with next year being a deadly lineup of guards, but we need to get someone in the portal to replace First Size. I think that answer is on the roster already, and it's Burgess. I think Burgess has shown you little glimpses of what he can be, and he's not going to be a fully baked product next year, but he's going to be a lot better. And the reason I say that is I just believe in Brandon Brantley. I think Coach Brantley has done so many great things when it comes to watching guys get better and better, watching big men get better. He won't be as he's not going to be as athletic as First. That's the thing. There's never a one-to-one swap, right? Never with big men. But Brandon Brantley is really good at getting guys better, and Burgess has the ability to just be a strong man, right? He is a really tough guy. I don't know if you've heard, what's this funny, the story from Painter in the post game about Burgess getting that tech. He said something got in Leal's face as they were walking off the court. Really soft tech. I'm convinced one of those officials was Anthony Leal's dad or his uncle, because they were really trying to protect him in the first half specifically. But Burgess gets that tech, and Pate said in the postgame, he's like, seriously, that's the nicest guy on our team. He's the nicest guy in our lineup, and they tech him up for something he says. I'm not saying that Burgess is a man without flaw, but it's funny. He just said a little something to Leal, just whispered a little something in his ear. Probably told him how handsome he was in his stupid haircut. Let's see. John Hawk says, even though we won the game, whining fans are talking like they won. Let them talk. Just because they lost by only 5, can't do enough some days. That's a funny thing. My neighbor, they're IU fans, and he was very level-headed. He said, well, I'm just happy the game was close. And I think that one in itself, that's a level-headed way of looking at it. You know, if you're an IU fan, how bad they've played sometimes this year. And like I talked to in the postgame, statistically, that was a really good game for IU. And IU wanted and needed that game. They were a little bit desperate. If you look at the way Leal was doing his best to get Smith out of the game early, doing everything he could. And the funny thing is, when there was no more in the tank, meaning they knew he couldn't stop him, Smith had hit his stride a little bit in the second half. Smith didn't have foul trouble at that point, and they started putting other people on Smith. Leal was he wasn't really as important. But they were doing everything they could to try to keep him out. Jack-o'-lantern 22. Jay says, I'd like to see you get riled up. Bring up the SEC. I like to see you get riled up. Yes, he does. Bring up the SEC standings and riff on how dumb the rankings are these days. Okay, Jay, you asked for it. We talked about it. And Jay and we talked about how dumb the rankings are in general. But if you look at the SEC and how many teams are ranked, all it does to me is it reminds me of the stick that ESPN carries when it comes to media perception. What I mean is ESPN still has a big megaphone. ESPN still has vested interest in the ACC and the SEC, but more so the SEC. Bigger investment, Bigger cost. Everybody's got to be on board. You've heard dumb things this year, like Jay Billis saying, winning the SEC tournament is going to be more difficult than winning the NCAA tournament. That was said. That was said publicly. If you missed it, that's an asinine idea. Anyway, okay, but the idea that the SEC is somehow this super conference, we've seen this bit before. If you're old like I am, you remember when ESPN had heavy interest in the Big East, and they said, there is no conference like the Big East. We have never seen this in history. And anytime I see that in any part of the media where they're telling you something has never, ever happened, all that I say is go back and learn history. ESPN anchors, learn history. It's not true. The SEC's solid. They're good. The top 3 or 4 teams are as good as anybody in America. If you have watched college basketball, like, man, those teams are good. And by the way, the infrastructure the SEC has always had, the ability for them to pay players and to get guys there, they've been doing this for a long time. They're experts at it. And so they got rosters that are absolutely loaded, those top 3 or 4 teams. But are they good top to bottom? Do they deserve to have 8, 9, 10 teams ranked? Hell no. Do they deserve to have 10, 11, 12 teams in the NCAA tournament like some of these boneheaded idiots are saying on ESPN? No. Thanks, Jay. He continues. Also, did you know that Fran McCaffrey, if you know Jay Money, you know this is one of his favorite things to talk about. Did you know, and everyone should know this, that Fran McCaffrey has never finished higher than 3rd in the Big Ten and has been a coach for 29 years and never been to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament? I bring this up for no real reason. I'll tell you why you brought it up, Jay. Purdue plays Iowa this week at Iowa. That's why you brought it up. That matters. My son, LBD, brought up a very good point. He said, how is Iowa not better? I've got an answer. But he said, how is Iowa not better? Because he looked at the stats after I asked him a question, because he's very good at diving deeper into stats and telling me why I'm wrong and why I'm an idiot. And he can do it. He usually can. He had a hard time today when I said, what makes Purdue special? What's the deal here? But he looks at Iowa and he says, man, they shoot the ball really well as a team, and they play with very high pace. All true. Iowa is Purdue's antithesis, and you all know why. If you're going to say it's defense. That's the difference between Purdue and Iowa. Purdue values defense. Iowa values fast pace and offense, and it has not paid off for old Fran and company. Good job, Jay. Good stuff. John Timmons says, Jacobson would give us a rim protector if he didn't get hurt. No doubt. Don't think he would ever been great offensively for his freshman year. Kind of agree, but kind of also, I told you, the thing I liked about Jacobson when I watched him play for USA was how quickly he gets up and down the court. He's really deceptively athletic and quick for his size. A lot like Edey in that way. Edey was so good at running baseline to baseline quickly, and it showed when he went to the NBA camps, or whatever you want to call it. What do you call them? Darn it, brain. His times were as good as many guards, getting up and down and running the cone drill and things like that. So Thorogood says, I think Painter is about his Magical Mystery Tour album, or at least just finished it. He's still got Let It Be, Abbey Road, the White Album, Yellow Submarine, etc. So you think there's a long way to go and that Paint is going to get better. I think through your Beatles prism, that's what we're looking at. And I think you're right. I think that's the thing that's amazing about Paint is you've seen he's got more in the tank, and he's figured some things out. He's in an elite group because he got to the Final Four. We all talked about that. But I think there's another level of Paint's coaching career that we haven't seen yet. I think you're right. Jay comes back and says, okay, I'll give you a real comment. I like the other two. I'll be real honest. I'll give IU and Woody this much. They aren't afraid of coming into Mackey. That's true. And I will say, I'll go further on that. Woody specifically is really good versus Paint. All right. Why is that? I think it's pretty simple. I think there's a lot of juice in that game for Woodson. I think he is probably different before those games, for the Purdue IU games, than he is in other weeks of practice. You can tell IU is turned up a little bit when they come to play Purdue, because Woodson remembers the good old days of IU versus Purdue. And he remembers absolutely nutty Bob Knight hating losing to Purdue, right? So there's no doubt. I think that's a very fair comment that IU is very, very good. Woodson's very good. Right now, Woodson stands at 3-4 versus Painter. Paint's got to beat him one more time to make it look like there's a little space between them during his time before Woodson gets fired at the end of the season. Thorogood says Painter will be viewed above Izzo after 20 more years. Yeah, and if you look at the ranking, obviously Katie's up there. Knight is up there. Izzo either is about to, I think he's about to pass Knight in all-time wins. I think that's true, which is wild. All-time Big Ten wins. But yeah, I think I did a deep dive into where Paint, when he passes Katie, and we're getting close. I think we're within 30 games where Paint's getting close to Katie. That's pretty fun stuff. So you're dealing with a season and a third with Purdue's average wins a year. That's pretty rare. It's good stuff. Thorogood says extend Woody right on. Doug and Angie Lotta says Purdue is the Rodney Dangerfield. We can't get any respect. Yeah, we said this last year. The weird thing is the media they like Painter, but the funny thing is we're back to that no respect thing. And that comes from ESPN. I don't understand. If you read who their favorites for coach of the year are, Paint's not even in the top 25. And I posted that on Twitter. Unbelievable to me. So they had their top 15 and then they had their honorable mentions and Paint wasn't in any of that. I think it's hilarious. Paint will be in that list at the end of the season one way or another because somebody's going to have to eat some crow because that's an asinine thing. Paint wasn't on anybody's preseason, like they're going to win national championship, but look at Purdue, 10th in the nation. Oh, good. Thorogood says driving to Iowa Tuesday. That'll be fun. Bought 7 tickets, 14th row, $30 a piece. You're not going to get that at Mackey. It's a good point. Who's Johnny says, I wouldn't take Iowa lightly. They run and gun. Nobody takes Iowa lightly. I don't think that's what Jay's point was, and that's surely not my point. They score a lot of points, and they can get up and down in a hurry, and Purdue has gotten beaten by them in the past. And winning on the road in the Big Ten, I don't care who it's against, should be savored every single time it happens. So I'm not taking Iowa lightly, not by any means. But in March, Fran is a different story. Zach Welch says Michigan State has a mother of February. Here it comes. Exactly. I don't think it's a stretch to say MSU will have 4 or 5 conference losses by the end of the month. We control our own destiny for a three-peat. I agree. But here's where I wanted to talk to you guys about this, and I'm going to bring this up again. But I want to talk. There's one stretch in Purdue's season coming up. I think you should look at. It starts with at Michigan versus Wisconsin, at Michigan State, and at IU. That stretch, I think it starts next week. Maybe start at the end of this week. It's next week. It's the toughest stretch of Purdue's season. That's the stretch that decides Purdue's success this season as a Big Ten team. Not overall, none of that. But as a Big Ten team in the Big Ten race, that's the stretch that defines it. So, and yes, Michigan State's comeuppance is coming, I believe. Let's see. Who's Johnny says Jacobson would have averaged 8 points a game, I assume. Yeah, that'd be pretty good. That'd be a pretty good place to be. He continues, many of the Big Ten teams are playing much better. USC, UCLA, Wisconsin, Illinois, Ohio State, and Illinois again. Michigan State, these teams are going to be tough from here out. Illinois is going to be tough twice, according to that. But Illinois is going to be tough because they're healthy now, and they are a good and talented team. IU is a talented team. There's no doubt. But I look at things like Ohio State. Purdue lost that game at Ohio State. Ohio State makes it tough on everybody, right? And there are teams, every Big Ten team has one guy you're like, whoa, really, really good player, really tough to defend. How do you match up with that? For instance, Minnesota and Garcia, right? Minnesota can be scary. And they've shown it a couple times where like, man, when they turn it on, they're good. And they're an also ran in the whole conference. So pretty incredible. Greg Mitchell says, we're about to the point in the season where Miles and Heidi started to raise their games another level last year, right? I would love to see this again. It could make for another postseason, a great postseason run. If you believe what I believe, guard play. So it starts at point guard play. Pretty good place for Purdue to be. Point guard play matters in the NCAA tournament. It matters in conference tournaments, but it really matters because when a guy gets hot and he's a guard and the ball in his hands a lot, really tough to deny a team like that. And so Purdue's going to have a lot of guys on the roster, and there's a lot of chances of different dudes to get hot at the right time. I would not bet against Purdue coming down the stretch here because these weapons, they're all over. They're all over. And even TKR, man, the guy can shoot from anywhere on the court. And I know we all have kind of taken for granted that just ho-hum, here's another 15, 17 points. He's really dangerous. And that's about it. Is that a quick cast? I don't think so. It's 45 minutes, but it kind of is a quick cast. I'll probably retitle it and call it a quick cast. The word quick, I've never understood what it meant. Thanks to everybody for tuning in and coming here. Good conversation. Always nice to see Jay Money coming on. That was great. Jay Money has been busy keeping up with little Jay Money, as he's an aspiring basketball star, just like his dad, incredible athlete. Hope you have a great day. Enjoy your Sunday. Enjoy some stupid NFL festivities and some okay college basketball. There's some okay games. God bless you. Hammer down. We'll talk to you soon. See ya.